Hello everyone. Let's do a short check. Can you see me and can you hear me? Can you write something in the chat box, please? Yep. Okay, so the first responses, because I'm always a bit nervous to make sure that everything is working. Right, so I see 33 participants, and that's amazing. I'm really so glad that you are so punctual and so motivated to start on time. I really like to start on time. And thank you very, very much for your time, for your effort, for your motivation, and for your interest. I hope today's presentation is going to live up to your expectations. All right, let's start. And we have a lot on our plates today. We're going to cover a lot of topics. So, yeah, here is the outline of the webinar. Here are the things we're going to talk about. We're going to start briefly with the overview of intermediate plateau. We're going to talk about some problems and solutions to that. Then we're going to have a quick overview of 5 challenges of teaching and learning at advanced. Then we're going to concentrate on 2 of these challenges, and these 2 are the gap between receptive and productive knowledge. We're going to look at a bit of theory and how you can implement it into practice. And then we're going to look at the ways how you can expand your vocabulary and become an autonomous learner. And finally, we're going to look at Quizlet. I'm going to show you the way how to make a good set and how to use it in and outside of the classroom. All right, seemed like a huge agenda. Let's go there. Okay, intermediate plateau. During this week on Instagram, we talked some length about that. And intermediate plateau is that when a learner is quite comfortable with using the language, communicating, and their language knowledge serves for most of their professional needs, usually. But still, it's a far cry from a real C1 and C2. Yeah, so if you imagine, a person, sitting on this B2 level and, trying to climb C1, this is a person who is stuck at intermediate plateau. The thing is that it's becoming harder to notice the progress as easily as it was before. And so let's have a look. What reasons are there? Okay, so you say it's quite quiet here, so I'm going to maximize my my microphone, and so it's better now. Is it better now? Right. It was quite okay, but now something goes wrong. Okay, I'm gonna, yeah, it's better now. Fine. Yeah, I see the level is rising. Okay, so reasons for reaching the plateau. So first of all, learners fail to set clear goals and develop healthy habits early on. Learners expect their progress to be linear, but in fact, it's not linear. And any skill development has diminishing marginal returns. Most of learners quickly reach a comfort zone in which they have trouble getting out. Right. What we can, if we can illustrate that, so it's going to look like that. So on the left, you see imagined learning curve. Yeah, so this is what we expect to have. But on the right is the reality. As you see, it was quite different from what we would like to have. And the progress is really not linear. Sorry, Tanya, we can change the volume in the video screen, I think. Tanya, can you do that? Because actually, let's have a brief stop, quick here. Yeah, because I don't see any buttons that I can use. Right, so some people say it's much better now. Okay, so I'm gonna try to stick as closer to the microphone as possible, and I'm gonna speak quite loudly. Okay. Right, yeah, so you see the difference. Yeah, imagined learning curve, something that we wish for, and the actual learning curve, it slows down um, as we go on with our learning, right? So, what can we do about that? First of all, we should think about our motivation. Yeah, so sort out your motivation and think carefully. Why did you start learning in the first place? What do you want to achieve? And why do you want or need to achieve it? When you have a clear goal, it's easier to keep going, right? Then it's very useful to set a clear goal, an achievable goal, and it could be, for example, an exam. Yeah. So if you are somewhere on your upper intermediate level, B2, so you can take the FCE, have the result, and think about passing CE in the future. So that's going to be achievable goal for, let's say, half a year, or maybe 2 years for some people. Or again, if you have recently passed CE, you can set the target to pass CPE, for example, in the nearest future, like in a year. Right? Okay. And the last thing you really need to do is to practice more. And at this stage, it's so easy to become a passive learner. So you need to force yourself out of your comfort zone. What can you do? You can try talking about topics you're not very comfortable with. Find ways to practice speaking outside of the classroom. And what's more, you should listen and watch to challenging videos and audios at the appropriate level. And the magic folder you will receive after this webinar hopefully can help you with that. Listening and reading and watching videos at appropriate level. Just one short example to illustrate that. One of my really good students who is striving to reach advanced, so she sometimes complains that she doesn't know what to do because she's listening to Luke's English podcast, which is quite popular. And she said, like, I don't know how to develop further. Like, it seems so easy. And I said, well, yes, so Luke English podcast is a very good, excellent resource for intermediate learners. Yeah, but for advanced learners, you need some other things. Right. Let's move on to 5 challenges of teaching and learning at advanced. And these are the 5 challenges that were posed by Jack Richards. By the way, do you know who's Jack Richards? Type yes or no. Have you heard about him before? So Jack Richards is quite a legend in ALT. He wrote some very influential ALT books on methodology, on teacher education, on different methods and approaches in language teaching. So he's a real legend in ALT, one of the biggest names in ALT. If you ever come across his books, I really recommend you to read it. It's extremely useful. And this article I'm talking about, you're going to receive it in your magic folder as well. It's quite short and it's an easy read, so you can study it in more detail. So Jack Richards posed 5 challenges that we need to take on when we want to proceed to advanced level. So first of all, there is a gap between receptive and productive competence. Yeah. Fluency may have progressed at the expense of complexity. So the learner can express themselves quite easily, clearly, but the complexity of the language is still, sticks at the intermediate level, so they don't incorporate a lot of vocabulary and structures they have learned. Yeah? So again, these 2 factors are very much interconnected. Learners have a limited vocabulary range. Yeah, what he is meaning with that is that at intermediate, upper intermediate level, the vocabulary size is around 6,000 word families. But for C1, it should be 8,000 word families at least. And for C2, for proficiency, it should be around 10,000. So you can imagine to proceed from, let's say, A2 to B1, it can be 500 to 1,000 new word families. But to proceed from B2 to C1, it's 2,000 word families, quite a lot of vocabulary. And then, number 4, language production may be adequate, but often lacks the characteristics of natural speech. This is what we talked about during our week on Instagram, when you kind of you can express yourself quite easily, but you still feel embarrassed when you talk to native speakers and you don't know how to react to some of their sentences and so on. So you feel kind of insecure while holding a natural conversation. And finally, there are persistent fossilized errors. Do you know what fossilized error is? Type yes or no. What is a fossilized error? Do you probably know what it was, a fossil? Yeah, so some kind of no idea. Okay. So a fossilized error is kind of the old error that sticks to your brain or to your habits. And it means that, for example, you make mistakes that you know the grammatical rule. Long time ago you learned it, but you still make the same mistake. Yeah, so I just can name the most frequent fossilized error is when you omit third person s. Yeah, you say he have, or she say. Yeah, you know your students do that quite often. She say that. Yeah, she says that. And also a fossilized error is a misuse of some words. Yeah, so for example, my personal top words are rest for relaxation. Yeah, you ask your student, how was your weekend? Oh, I had a good rest. Yeah, so not very correct English. Or, for example, we Russian speakers very often say variant instead of option. Yeah, I have a lot of variants here. Yeah, I have a lot of options here, and so this kind of things that you should have been learning long time ago, and you kind of learned that, but it doesn't stick. Yeah, so this is a fossilized error. Right. Due to time constraints, I'm going to concentrate only on the first and the third of these problems in my presentation. But as I say, you're going to receive this article by Jack Richards, and you can read about the other challenges in more detail, and you're going to learn more about them. So let's proceed to a gap between receptive and productive knowledge. And let's look at some theory and how we can implement this theory into practice. So another ELT legend, a guy called Stephen Krashen, Professor Stephen Krashen, he created one of the most influential theories of second language acquisition, theories of how foreign language or second language is acquired by people. He did that in early 80s, quite a long time ago, but still this theory is quite influential even nowadays, and Stephen Krashen is well and alive. He is a frequent speaker on different international conferences. He is a very charming gentleman, so if you're interested, you can watch his lectures on YouTube and learn more about his theory. But for my presentation, I've picked only one of his quotations. More effort should be devoted to developing learners' receptive competence rather than their productive competence. Productive ability will arise naturally from receptive knowledge. And now I would like to ask you, do you agree or not with that? That productive ability will arise naturally. from receptive knowledge. So you kind of read and listen, read and listen, read and listen. Sometimes you speak, and then naturally it comes up in your language. Yes and no, says Tanya. I suppose so. Okay, to some extent. Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, so some of you slightly disagree, and some of you say no. Yeah. The thing is, yeah, this is a very controversial, I would say, controversial sentence, and let's actually. The fact is that recent theories of second language acquisition no longer assume that productive skills will arise naturally from comprehensive skills, and that's why we need two more factors that are necessary to do so. And there are two other hypotheses that came up later and that help us to see how we can bridge this gap between passive and active knowledge. Yeah, and these two theories or hypotheses are the noticing hypothesis and the output hypothesis. And now we're going to talk about it a bit more. So, the noticing hypothesis was posed by Professor Richard Smith. He's an American professor, also quite famous for his research. And he said, people learn about the things that they attend to and do not learn much about the things they do not attend to. Sounds like Captain Obvious, right? Yeah, okay, so of course, yeah, but indeed. So this phrase was taken from Schmidt's article describing his own experience of learning Portuguese in Brazil. So he went to Brazil to study Portuguese, and according to Krashen's theory, so the person we just seen on the previous slide, you just immerse in language, and the language takes care of itself. Yeah, so you listen, you talk, and blah blah blah, and that's how it works. But Schmidt proved that it's not really the case, at least it's not really the case for everyone. You need deliberate practice, you need classroom instructions, you need a teacher a teacher who draws your attention to specific features of language, and you need to pay deliberate attention to that, and then you learn. Seems quite plausible, right? And this is what he suggested. Everything that we hear or read in a foreign language is called input. And we don't learn much from input as itself. Again, imagine you listen to a language you have no idea about. You listen to Chinese, you have no words. You don't know any words in Chinese, and it wouldn't help much for you to just listen to Chinese. But the input should become intake. And intake is that part of input that you notice. Yeah, so this part that you deliberately pay attention to. And you learn from intake. You don't learn much from input. What does it mean for us as teachers in practice? How can we apply this wonderful noticing hypothesis in our classrooms? So the first obvious thing is that we should identify differences between what students hear and the printed version of the text. So it means that you have to work with scripts of the audio listening or tasks you do. For example, you could complete a closed version of the listening text. You can complete a sentence stems taken from the text. You can check off from list of expressions that occurred in the text. Yeah, so this kind of things you can do with the script. So you have to work with the script. Now I'm going to show you one example of such a lesson, how it can look like. So let's take a listening lesson. Okay? So first you do the usual things you always do with a listening task. So first of all, you do a lead-in, you can show some visuals, you can draw some questions for your learners to discuss, to activate the schemata of them, to activate their background knowledge. Then you give them a gist task, so you pose a single question so that they understand the general idea of the listening. Then you proceed to listening for specific information. Usually it can be some exact questions to answer with options or without options. So they need to listen to it more attentively. And this is going to be usually the second listening. And then you either wrap it up with some discussion, and this is your typical listening lesson. But what can you do after that? You can give your students the script. You can highlight interesting fixed phrases, collocations, idioms, and phrasal verbs. And this is the work you have to do before the lesson. Of course, you need to think about what kind of language you want your students to notice, what kind of things you want to draw your students' attention to. If there are some new words, ask students to work out the meaning from context. Or you can do a matching exercise. So, for example, meaning, word definition, as we usually see it in course books. Then you can explain the items. You can give examples of this, of the usage of these new words or phrases. You can provide translation if necessary. If it's easier to provide translation, why not? Yeah. And then you can do a personalized activity. Yeah. So, for example, you can ask students questions related to language items. Now I'm going to show you what kind of questions to what kind of language items it could be. And in the next lesson, you can give the students the script of the audio you did last time. You can give the script back, but this time you gap the items you focused on at the previous lesson. And this going to intensify or activate their memory and their attention to that. Or you can create a Quizlet set with gapped sentences, and we're going to talk about Quizlet a bit later. So this is the illustration of what you can do. So this is an example of a listening text from a complete advanced, a course book that I use a lot. And so you see I underlined, this is a teacher's book, I underlined some of the phrases I like to draw my students' attention to. So, for example, what can you ask about this? So this is with free lecture thrown in, and then in speaker 3, yeah, this new show ready, and he's been going to incredible lengths to get this new trick right. Yeah? What can you ask your students? What questions can you ask? Can you type some ideas in the chat box? Yeah? How can you personalize these items? Yeah, going to incredible lengths. What could it be? So there's silence in the chat box. All right, I'll torture you with that. You can ask, for example, for whom would you go to incredible lengths? What would you do if you go to incredible lengths for someone? Have you ever been, and then there's another word, yeah, hoodwink. Yeah, it's also speaker 3. He just wants to hoodwink absolutely everyone. Yeah, Evgenia, thank you very much. Have you ever gone to incredible length in order to achieve something? Very, very good example. Yeah, hoodwinks, and usually students are not very familiar with this word, so I try to let them guess from the context, because this text is about a guy who is a magician, so he trains to do his tricks, and he wants to hoodwink everyone. And what can I ask the student? Have you ever been hoodwinked by someone? Yeah, have you ever? So that's gonna take back to some personal story. And then at the very, very bottom, yeah, another story. No doubt we were a bit naive, but we lapped it all up. A nice phrasal verb, to lap up. Yeah. Again, this story is about children who listen to some fantastic stories by their uncle, I guess. Yeah? Again, first try to elicit what students think it means, and then you can ask them, yeah, who can love up fantastic stories? What can we call these people? And if you're lucky enough, you can elicit the word gullible, for example, and maybe you had this word sometime before. Yeah. Right. So, of course, it is useful, very useful to have your scripts in Word format so you can gap the sentences in the document. And that's why I think that Outcomes is a very good book series because Outcomes gives you all the listening scripts in audio format and it's much, much easier to edit. But if you don't have it in audio format, you can do just like I did. So I took this TipX thing and I gapped those sentences. And so next time during the lesson, I can give my students this script back and say, okay, can you remember, if it's a group, yeah, do it in pairs. Yeah, in pairs, can you remember what were those expressions? And that's why that's how you can do it. Okay, so that was noticing hypothesis, and we move on to the output hypothesis, which is the second thing we can rely on to activate students' passive knowledge and transfer it to active knowledge. Yeah, so Meryl Swain is the author of this output hypothesis, and she said, practicing using target language forms is necessary for learners to acquire new target language. Carefully structured and managed output is essential if learners are to acquire new language. Sounds a bit academic, yeah? What is output? It's what we speak or write. Yeah, so these are the productive skills. And managed output here refers to the tasks and activities that require the use of certain target language forms that stretch your learner's language knowledge and consequently require some restructuring, yeah, so reformulating in their brains. Right, how can we apply this to our classroom? Again, some things are very similar. You can use written sentence completion tasks requiring use of expressions and other linguistic items that occur in the listening text. This is something similar we've just looked at, but there's going to be sentence completion. Yeah, so you just take out some sentences, you make them open-end sentences, and ask your students to complete them. Dialogue practices and discussion based on items from the text. This is what we usually do, I think, in the classroom. Role plays in which students are required to use key language from text. Yeah, you give them the key language and say, okay, so now try to make up a dialogue using these expressions. These kind of things I think are more or less familiar to you. My personal favorite is personalization activities, so how to make this your own. And now I'm going to show you another procedure of this kind of personalization activity. Are you familiar with this book? Where is this unit taken from? Look at the layout. Who's going to be the first? Okay, what is it? Yep. Lots of yeses here. In use, yeah. So this is in use series. I love them. This is Cambridge in use series. The first is the most famous. That was Raymond Murphy's Grammar in Use. But I'm a huge fan of Vocabulary in Use series, and there's a lot of these books. I mostly use Vocabulary in Use Advanced and collocations, idioms, and phrasal verbs in Use Advanced. I think that these books contain a fantastic variety of advanced vocabulary that you would otherwise don't meet much in usual course books. I really love it. I base my Quizlet classes mostly on in use series. So, but the frequent critique of in use series is that, okay, so there's a lot of language, There's only one page of exercises, and what I'm going to do with that, yeah, so how to learn all these things, yeah. And this is a question I was really trying to solve, to tackle somehow. And I'm going to give you some ideas of what I do with them. Yeah. So you see a beautiful unit with a lot of wonderful adjectives talking about yourself. What are you going to do? First of all, you let students become familiar with the vocabulary in the unit at home before you work with that. Please ask them to use a good dictionary. Underline words they find funny, peculiar, particularly useful. Don't ask them to learn everything. It's not very effective. They won't. They're gonna learn the words that they find interesting. Again, you remember noticing hypothesis. And also you can use a Quizlet set, which I'm going to show you later, so they can study these words in a Quizlet set before. Okay, in class, if you have a group or one-to-one or in peers, doesn't really matter, you can ask your students. Okay, what animal represents you? This one, yeah? To what extent do the characteristics apply to you? And of course, this is funny, this is not serious, there's a lot of puns in there, but they can speculate a bit. Okay, so for example, I'm a rat. Yeah, I'm a rat. Okay, well, I'm quite imaginative. I hope I'm charming and generous, but I wouldn't describe myself as quick-tempered because I think I'm quite patient and opportunistic. No, I'm not opportunistic. I never use some situations for my own good and so on. And of course, you know, there's going to be a lot of fun because all the positive adjectives, the people would tend to agree, and all the negative, they would disagree. Yeah, okay, then you can say, okay, what words would you choose to describe yourself? Yeah, if this doesn't fit, what other words can you use to describe yourself? Right? Okay. Then, the next stage, think about your best friend, partner, parent, family member, and so on. And you repeat the procedure above. And there are possible extensions after that. Pick a celebrity everyone knows. Speculate about their personality. You can also bring some pictures of celebrities into the classroom if you want, or you can Google them if you do an online lesson. Then, pick a famous personality, describe the character. The others should guess who it is. Yeah, so this is a guessing game. You don't tell them the name of the celebrity, but someone describes the celebrity, and then everyone tries to guess. Finally, as a home assignment, you can ask your students to write an essay describing their teenage idols, because almost everyone had a teenage idol, and they can speculate about their character. This is also a nice moment where can you either revise or introduce a language of speculation. Yeah. I think he must be a very charming person because blah blah blah. He seems to be very garrulous because he talks a lot and makes a lot of jokes, yeah, and so on. So a lot of this language of speculation can be fed in this activity. Right, this is a personalization activity. And I mentioned my Quizlet set, and this is an example of my Quizlet set on this particular unit. And you see, I also try to find some funny pictures, illustrative pictures to accompany the words. Yeah, so sagacious. Yeah, I thought about Yoda. He seemed very sagacious. And what else you can include in these sets is, for example, there is a word naive, which is very easy for Russian learners because we have this word in Russian. This is a cognate. But you have to draw your students' attention to the colligations and to the use of this language. Do you know what's a colligation? Type yes or no. What is a colligation? You know, most people know what is collocation, but a colligation, kind of new fashionable term. Yeah, some of you say yes, some of you say no. Yeah, so colligation is the grammar incorporated into the use of a word, yeah, or a phrase. So if you look at naive, yeah, you see it's not that he is naive or she is naive and that's it, yeah. But the use is that it is naive to do something, yeah. It is naive to think, to suppose, to assume. Or it was little naive of you to blah blah blah, yeah. So it's not just he's naive and she's naive, but this whole chunk, yeah, this is what we call colligation. This is a grammar structure incorporated in the use of this language. So it is much more frequent to see an example. It's naive to think of something blah blah blah, and it was naive of you to blah blah blah, yeah. And this is what is usually our students don't know or don't notice, because they think, naive, I know this word because it's present in Russian as well. Right. Well, yes, we can say he's naive, of course, but this is not, you shouldn't limit yourself to only these kind of sentences, because that would be too simple and that wouldn't reflect the actual use of this language in English. See, that's the difference. Right. However, and there's one kind of big however thing, another citation from a researcher. The decision to incorporate a word in one's productive vocabulary is entirely personal and varies according to each student's motivation and needs. If you have studied in Russian faculties of philology or linguistic faculties, kind of universities or something, you are painfully familiar with the notion of active vocabulary. Are you? Do you remember these study days with, have you learned the active vocabulary? Now you're going to write a test on active vocabulary. So I remember I was cursed for that. Like, and this active vocabulary was taken from some ancient fiction literature, and you said, oh, Jesus, I hate this vocabulary and so on. Yeah, so again, the thing is that we can feed in a lot of language. We can give our students a lot of language. It doesn't mean, and we should not force them to remember each and every item. You should not force to use them in freer activity, in free speech. If they feel like they can use this word, they use it, but you really don't have to, kind of punish them somehow if they are not using it. And there's this famous saying, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. In some sense, it is true in this situation. So you can show them the variety, you can show them the way of how to say that, but they will pick up only some of these things. They can't pick all of these things. Right, so that was about active-passive thing, and we will move on to the next thing. Expanding your vocabulary and becoming an autonomous learner. Another citation here. A receptive vocabulary of some 5,000 to 6,000 words would appear to be a good threshold at which to consider learner at the top of the intermediate level and ready to take on an advanced program. And this is what I already mentioned about moving from upper intermediate to C1, you have to add 2,000 word families, and to proceed from advanced to proficiency, there's another 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 word families. Yeah, so this is if you have something around 500 to 600,000, this is a start. Yeah, and the same O'Keefe and Michael McCarthy, you're going to see the list of all the resources where I took this citation from at the end of the presentation. So in their book, they set some aims of an advanced program. What are the goals? First of all, to increase the receptive vocabulary size. Receptive is what we call passive, so that you recognize. To enable comprehension, target up to 95% for typical text to be reached. Yeah. So when we read a text at an advanced level, so if you're upper intermediate, so you will understand something between 70 to 80% of words. And surely you can guess some of them, but you can't guess everything if you only understand like 70% of the words. And so the target is that you understand more words. So if you are at level of 90 to 95% of understanding, it's much easier and it's very realistic to guess the other words from the context. Right, then expose the learner to a range of vocabulary at frequency level beyond the first 5 to 6,000. And here is attention to course books, because the course books at intermediate, upper intermediate level, and sometimes at advanced level, they expose a lot of this high frequency vocabulary. And this is done because, well, naturally we have to acquire frequent vocabulary first and then more advanced. But this is the stage, this is the point where you have to take yourself, if you're a learner, or your students, out of this comfort zone and expose them to less frequent vocabulary. But of course, you have to be reasonable here. You don't have to learn a lot of rare and very obscure words like dated or old-fashioned words or very, very literate words and so on. Then focus on specific lexical and effective meaning, connotations, register, and develop the depth of lexical knowledge and collocational competence. This example with naive I just gave you, this is also an example of developing the depth of lexical knowledge. So you don't just know that naive is naive in Russian, but you also know how to use it most naturally in your language. And, well, collocational competencies. You know how to use collocations correctly in your speech, for example. And finally, yeah, to train awareness, skills, and strategies that will develop the learner, help the learner to become an independent vocabulary learner and user. And we're going to look at some activities on how to do that. Right. Here are some practical things to help learners to develop their own approaches to vocabulary learner. So first of all, guided discovery. Do you know what's a guided discovery lesson in grammar? Type yes or no. Have you heard? Do you use it? Guided discovery lessons. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you know, this is when we don't just present the grammar, show the form, and then ask students to practice it. We give our students input. Okay. A lot of people know that, and we guide our students to discover the rules, to work out the rules by themselves. Similar thing you can do with guided discovery in Lexis. You can ask questions, offer examples to guide your students to guess the meaning exactly. And what I demonstrated with this to go to incredible length and hoodwink and lap it all up. So this was kind of a guided discovery activity as well. Contextual guesswork, knowledge of formation, word formation, Latin, Greek roots, discourse, context. Again, if your students are aware of some Greek and Latin prefixes or suffixes or roots, it's easier to show them how to work out the meaning of the meaning out of the context. A very frequent example is the word to encourage. Yeah, it's a very, very frequent word, and in Russian we have a similar word, courage, and this is a French word. And if you kind of try to work out what it means courage in Russian and what it means encourage in English, so that they see the prefix N and so on, it's going to make it a bit easier for them to guess. Because usually what the students do, okay, they look at the sentence. Okay, I don't know what's encourage, and they don't even try to guess. So if you guide them, if you push them a bit to analyze the form. That, aha, so encourage and courage, they're kind of related, even though they don't mean the same thing. But they kind of guess it later. Surely you have to be very careful with that approach, because false friends in language, some of the words are similar, but some of the words are totally dissimilar. But still, it can be a very effective strategy. Mastering dictionary use, the third thing. Meaning, connotation, collocation, word family, examples, verb patterns, verb forms, plurality, style, register. All this information you have to be able to extract from the dictionary and sometimes from the corpus, and I will going to show you how. Okay, this is the first activity, which is taken from the book called Advanced Learners by Alan Malley. And for example, okay, do you know what's thesaurus? It's a kind of dictionary. What kind of dictionary it is? Do you know that? Thesaurus, also, I think it's a Latin word, thesaurus. And oops, yes, with synonyms. This is kind of dictionary, synonyms dictionary. No, it's not collocations, it's synonyms. Yeah, the dictionary of collocations is called dictionary of collocations. Okay, so imagine either in class with paper thesaurus or online with a computer. So also it can be either incorporated in a dictionary like a Longman dictionary, or it can be thesaurus.com. I think there's also a good website. So you give your students a list of words that are very often confused. Need, require, want, demand. So this is just an example of these strings of words that are very often confused. And if, for example, you prepare for exams like FC, CCP, you have this task which is called multiple choice, when you have 4 options and you have to choose. And yeah, by the way, YGE as well has this task. Is 4 options, and these are exactly the words that are very often confused. So you give them these strings of words, and then you ask them, okay, in 5 minutes, can you find out what's the difference between those words? And they search for some examples of them, different shades of meaning, and this is how they can discover the differences in meanings of these words and discover how to use a thesaurus, right? I think you can do it once in a classroom, so that students do it under your guidance, and you can help them to find the information they need. But your task is, of course, to let them use it on their own on a regular basis at home. This is the procedure, yeah? Lead a discussion about synonyms, show how completely synonymy is almost impossible. Yeah, I always tell my students that only behemoth and hippopotam, they are 100% synonyms because it describes the same animal. But in any language, you will very, very rarely find absolute synonyms. Natalia, what site do you recommend for that? Either it can be a good dictionary. For example, Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English gives this thesaurus part. If you look up a word that is often confused with some other words, they give you this thesaurus blog. Or thesaurus.com. It's a free resource. You can also find some good information there. Basically, any good dictionary will serve. Yeah, thank you, Jana, very much. Yeah, so you lead a discussion. Yeah, you raise their awareness about this absence of complete synonymy in language. In pairs, they students check differences of some words. Peers report back. Were there any problems or disagreements? They almost always are some disagreements or misunderstandings. Now ask the same peer to compare the 2 thesaurus they have using the guideline questions. Yeah? How easy it is to understand the directions for using the thesaurus, how easy it is to find the information you need, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so kind of this analytical task to compare the best sources. Right, let's move on. And this is an extension activity. This is a grid where you have adjectives on the left and nouns on this horizontal axis. And this is a collocational activity. And you should ask your students to find which words collocate and which are do not. Ask your students to tick in those grids that collocate well. It's very time-consuming task, so you might set it as a home assignment to do at home. And some course books, some course books give this kind of grids for students to fill in. Very time-consuming, but also very awareness-raising. Right. This is collocation and colligation. We have already mentioned colligation, so now you know what it is. This is an example from the British National Corpus. So you search for a specific word and you see all the instances of use of this word and a lot of examples. And you can extract some frequent collocations from that. And the thing that I wanted to so this is the procedure. The procedure is basically very similar to that of thesaurus. You can set the task to find collocations for spend and waste, and then you work either with a dictionary or with a corpus. And I really want to proceed to corpus activities. Yeah. Do you know what is a corpus, and have you ever used a corpus to search for some information about words, to yes, Alisa said, okay, Alisa, very good. Yeah, so a corpus is a huge database of language, and there are lots of corpora. This one I'm showing to you is called BNC, British National Corpus. It is now considered by the scientists a bit dated. It was created in late 80s, beginning of 90s, but it's a free source and you can access it just with registration. And this is a very, very user-friendly way of working with the corpus, and there are many more new, but usually you have to pay for a subscription. So you go to BNC. And the thing is that I wanted to share my desktop with you, but it seems like this function is not working very well now during the webinar. So I just copied some print screens, and I think I'm going to record a video how to search in a corpus. So you type in a word in this string, and for example, you click on collocate, and for example, you want to find the collocates for the word dangerous. These words 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 mean how many words do you allow to be between the word dangerous and some other words. Because in a sentence, they can be collocates, but they don't immediately stand next to each other. Yeah, so you allow some other words to stay in between. So usually you can just set it on default, like 4, usually, or you can sometimes limit it if you want to. And then you have the results, the frequency. Yeah. And on the left, there is a list of words that collocate with the word dangerous. And you also need to look at the average frequency. And this is this percentage column on the right. And they're not in descending order, they're kind of a funny order. But the higher the percentage is, the most often these two words occur together. So potentially dangerous has 6.36. It's a lot. It's a very, very high figure, and it means that potentially dangerous is a very, very frequent and set collocation. So the others are also possible, but they are not so frequent. Yes, are highly dangerous. Also possible, but not so. And look at driving. Yeah, dangerous driving. Yeah, so these words also go very often together. And this kind of information usually don't find in dictionaries, even in good dictionaries, because dictionary can give you only like some 2, 3, 5 maybe collocations, but not more. And I use it very often when, for example, I check my students' writing and they write some collocations I'm not sure about. So I feel uncomfortable about this collocation. So I go to, well, first I go to dictionary. If I don't find this collocation in the dictionary, I go to the corpus. And if I find it in the corpus, and if it's quite okay, if there are at least some instances of this use, I say, okay, yeah, it's in the corpus, so that's fine. If it's not in the corpus, so I say, sorry, this collocation does not exist. This is much better than to use Google, because in Google you can get all sorts of things, all kinds of things, kind of people, natives, non-natives, proficient, not proficient. You can never know who wrote this. But corpus is a very authoritative source and is also native language, and here you can be sure that this really exists in the language. All right, one more. Yeah, when you have two words, yeah, how to check two words collocation. You put one word here, it's humble, and you put the second word here, opinion, humble opinion. Well, we will know it exists, right? And then you click on the context and you see some examples of this collocation. We knew that exists, so we're quite sure, but let's look at the examples. First of all, if you look at the left column with this S meeting W, fict, prose, and so on, you see the areas of use of this word. So you see fict, prose, fiction, prose. So we can think, aha, so this collocation is very often used in fiction literature, not so much in spoken language. And if you see non-academic humanities, biography, essay, school, Hans art, to be honest, I have no idea what's Hans art, but no, it doesn't matter. So what conclusions can we draw? This is mostly used in written context, mostly used in fiction prose or some kind of essays, not very much used in spoken language. Of course, it doesn't mean that you can't use it in spoken language. It just means that it's not usual to say that. Yeah, it's not very frequent to say that. And again, you say, and then you see the examples. In my humble opinion, yeah, obviously that's the most frequent use of that. And after all, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and my humble opinion is that. So all the uses of this collocation is in my humble opinion. Great, now we know that from corpus. Thank you very much to the corpus. And the last thing, for example, you have a not very frequent word, such as garrulous. Again, you want to see, okay, how is it used and who can be garrulous? What can be garrulous? You choose list. And, okay, you see, 38 instances for a 100 million word corpus. 38 instances is not much, so we can think, this word is not very frequent. Noticed? And again, we see the examples and the context. You see, this time it's only fiction prose, the left column, and then we can see, garrulous guide, 5 garrulous somebody, we don't know, garrulous dumb woman, and blah, blah, garrulous speeches, garrulous old lady. Okay, more or less clear. So a guide, a woman can be garrulous. Garrulous is talkative, yeah. And again, this is kind of information you will never usually find in a dictionary, but the corpus will give you a fuller picture of a specific word and its usage. Right, I hope you're going to learn and love the B and C, I think it's just invaluable. Another thing I wanted to show you, but sadly this site was on the maintenance during the last 2 days, the English profile. Have you heard about that? Yes or no? The English profile. This is a project of Cambridge English, and it's very much aligned to the SEFRA, to the Common Framework of Reference for Language Levels. If you look at new Cambridge course books, you will see this English profile sign on some of their books. What is it? It's also a database. It's also for free, but you needed registration. And here you can see what words and what meanings are used on which SEFRA levels. And by using this source, you can, first of all, you can check at which level it is expected to use this word. And what's more interesting, and remember we talked about the depth of knowledge, we're also gonna learn what meanings or in what phrase this specific word is learned at which levels. So what you can do, is going to be your home assignment, go there, register, and try the word way, and you will be quite surprised that the word way is present at almost all SEFRA levels, but in different meaning or in different context. So again, you might have learned the word way when you were A1 student, and it means like a way to go, yeah, a path. But some more metaphorical, idiomatic expressions with way you will learn at later stages. Okay. And now, finally, we turn to the last big part of my presentation is Quizlet. And I'm going to tell you how to make a good set and how to use it in and outside the classroom. So, again, do you know Quizlet? Do you use Quizlet? Type yes or no. Yes, I'm just have to pick my nose. I'm sorry. It's the cold that is very persistent. Yeah, heard. Yes. Okay. Some of you say yes, some of you say no. So I love Quizlet, and I hope you're gonna love it too. So Quizlet is one of the best digital flashcard programs, and with flashcard we mean that good old cards, which is paper cards, where on the one side you write the word, on the other side you write translation, and so on. This is a flashcard, and Quizlet is an online digital flashcard program. It is free for users. It has some extended features for a teacher subscription. You can track class progress, you can record your own audio, and you can add pictures. It costs sometimes 28, sometimes 35 USD. I think it's not so expensive, especially if you use it for all of your students. And what's very good about it, it has a website and it has free apps for your phone, tablet. So I recommend you and your students to download this app so they can have it on their phones. Now we are used to, having our phones in our hands all the time, and people are fidgeting with their phones all the time. Why not develop a better habit and fidget it with Quizlet sets and not with, I don't know, VK feed, right? Good and bad things about Quizlet. A good thing, there is a huge database of sets created by other users and teachers. You can search for a course book, for a specific topic, for a specific level, for whatever. But the thing is that naturally it's extremely hard to find really good sets because people put all sorts of things, and really it sometimes can take you more time to find a good set rather than to create your own. Naturally, you can create your own sets, but it's very time consuming, so you have to, spend some time. So usually It takes me from 30 minutes to 1 hour to create a good set. Usually it works well with teenagers and audiovisual learners. It might not work for kinesthetic learners, so that was my problem with Quizlet. I'm a very, very kinesthetic person. I like to write things down. I like to have my notebook. I have to have my paper cards. But still, I found the ways how to no sound. Well, actually, I see that my microphone is only almost at a maximum, so it should be okay. Maybe returns to you, Evgenia. Kinesthetic learners might have problems, but there are ways of overcoming that. And there's plenty of learning modes that Quizlet gives you, but in my experience, only one learning mode is most used and is most effective. Okay, why Quizlet might be very effective, and there's solid research for that, confirming that this is a really valuable and good thing to do. This is one of the most effective deliberate learning tools as opposed to incidental. So incidental when you just learn something by chance, and deliberate when you do and learn it. Provides excellent results for initial learning of the vocab. Surely learning a word is not just a quick process. It's a slow process. It has its stages, and to help to overcome this first stage of getting familiar with this word, Quizlet can be very helpful. Quizlet also provides opportunities for spaced repetition that improves retention. Spaced repetition is something that people start to talk about a lot. It has become very fashionable. You don't just learn the word once, but you kind of go back to this set of words a day after, 3 days after, a week after, and a month after. Yeah, so this is spaced repetition, and it improves retention. Retention means that it sticks in your head. Yeah, you keep remembering this word. You don't forget this word. Results of such deliberate learning persist over several years. So it's again about retention. You don't forget this word after the lesson is finished or after the course is finished. And deliberately learning vocabulary becomes both explicit and implicit knowledge. There's a huge story of what is explicit and implicit. You can read loads of books in that. But it's kind of conscious and subconscious, to put it very simply. Again, you can see this book I'm referring to, this book by Paul Nation, who's a very, very influential person in vocabulary research. So as you see, there's a lot of scientific support for this kind of learning. So, how to create a good Quizlet set? Because there are, as we say, there's a lot of not very good sets on the Quizlet. So, what you need to do, your definitions should be short and precise. You should pick 3 to 5 most frequent collocations. And again, if you don't find them in the dictionary, you go to the corpus. To ease your way into it, you can give the first letter of the target word a phrase so that they can remember what was it. When it's just gapped, it can be quite difficult to remember what exactly word was in the set. You need to provide illustrative examples from a course book that you studied, from a dictionary or from a corpus, and provide visuals if possible, because visuals also appeal to visual learners, and it boosts the learning, the retention. This is an example of my set. So this is a set on personality traits. Yeah. So again, self-important, and I put a picture of Donald Trump here. Have an exaggerated sense of her importance, or his importance, doesn't matter. Short definition, right? Then who can be self-important? A bureaucrat or official can be self-important. He was a self-important little man. She was not at all self-important celebrity I'd read about. Yeah, so 2 or 3 illustrative examples. And you see below, you see the word garrulous. We looked at in the corpus, yeah. Garrulous cab driver or old woman. He became positively garrulous after a few glasses of wine. And again, this picture of women talking. All right. This I mentioned only one learning mode that is really useful in my opinion, and this learning mode is called Learn Bingo. And you study in small rounds. It's usually 7 instances in this every round. And when you start studying a new set, they give you options. They ease your way into studying the set. So, and you can just pick, yeah, again, these honest, salesman, business methods, financial advisor. And you pick unscrupulous. Then you proceed with that. And at the end of this micro set, they give you praise, yeah, and they say, you have seen 7 new words. There are 15 more to learn. And you have mastered none, because to master a word, you need to be able to type the word correctly. So it also focuses on your accuracy, yeah, on your spelling. And this is, for example, this is the next round. So I open the next round, and this time they ask me to type in the word that I have recognized in the previous set. So this was, I was about to type the word modest, yeah, modest behavior. He's very modest about his achievements. I type in answer. If it's all right, they give me a thumb up. And this is again how you proceed with this learn mode. You can do it on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer. You can do it everywhere. It works offline. It's really handy. So when I developed this habit, I really learned a lot of new words, and I always I create a set and then I trial it on my own. So I test it to make sure that everything is all right for my students. And you really, they really boost your motivation. You can also set a deadline when you want to finish this set. And you can also allow the application to send you push notifications. Like, you have a test in 7 days, let's go study. Yeah. You can also remove these notifications if they distract you. Right, so what can you do with your students? First of all, send students, your students the link to the set in Quizlet. Set a deadline to finish studying the set in the learn mode. Monitor the progress. What is good about this teacher subscription is that you can see how successful your students are. You can see the words that your students have most problems with. These words should be on your revision list all the time, yeah, during the next lesson and the upcoming lessons. So I think it's a very, very valuable and useful thing to have, you know, to see your students' progress. You check what words learners have most difficulty with. Yeah, exactly. And in the classroom, you can print the cards. Quizlet also has a wonderful feature of printing the cards on both sides. Again, I'm going to show you how to do that. And there are 2 ways of working it. Retrieval revision is when they look at the back of the card and say the word. Yeah, they look at this explanation, collocations, and examples, and they, this was this word. This is the easiest thing. This is what you regularly do. Backwards revision, it's the opposite thing. You look at the word, and then you ask yourself, okay, can you remember the context or the example that we had in our course book or any of the examples you had on the back? Or you can initiate a conversation or discussion. Again, the example with the word garrulous. Yeah, you can ask yourself, okay, who can be garrulous? Have you ever met a garrulous person? What did you tell them? What did they tell you? Did you get rid of them successfully? Yeah, so this initiates this discussion and reflection of who is garrulous, what can we do about garrulous people, And at this moment, we wave to the fans of the lexical approach, to Hugh Deller, and to Outcomes, because this is the approach of working with lexis that is very much promoted by Hugh Deller and by the lexical approach, and which I'm also a fan of. A post activity can be, you can create a test based on the words learned and revised. Again, Quizlet allows you to create a test online, or again, it can be printed. And one of my favorite things, I tried it out when I studied at NIL, Norwich Institute for Language Education. I learned this activity there. I call it revision domino, collective storytelling. You take several sets with different types of vocab, collocations, phrasal verbs, nouns, verbs. You distribute cards among participants. The best number is 4 to 6. With each turn, a participant should create a sentence or two with the target word on their cards. So they have cards and they have to think what kind of sentence can they make. And the most important thing, this sentence should be a part of the story, no matter how crazy the story is. So the first person begins a story and the others should add the next point, the next sentence of the story with using by using the words that they have on the card. I tried it for several times. It creates all kinds of crazy storytelling among students, a lot of fun and a lot of very practical revision. The winner is, of course, the person who gets rid of their cards the quickest. Okay. You see print, you click on print. Yes, this is oral activity, Natalia. Of course, it's made in a group. Yeah, the thing is that I didn't come up with the idea how to adapt it to online learning. It can be quite hard because you don't have the cards, you don't see these words. But if you teach often face to face, this is just perfect. Yeah, you go to print and then you choose large layout and double-sided printing. And this is where you can print the first layer and then you turn the page and you print the back of your card and then you cut it out. And this is how you can have a ready-made set to use in class. You are very welcome to join my Quizlet class. Actually, if there are many of you who want to join, I can send the invitation after the webinar to all of you because I have your emails, and it's going to be up to you. If you want to join, you join. If you don't want to join, you just ignore this email. And this is the link, a direct link to ask to send me to ask me to join the set. So either you get an email. In case you don't get an email, you're going to have this link in your magic folder. And this is for free, absolutely. I don't expect anything. And these are the sets I create based on my in-use units I study with my advanced learners. So this is a part of my advanced CE preparation course. And this is a work in progress. So I add new sets regularly. I really try to work a lot with that and to add as quickly as I can. And yeah, so you're very welcome to use that, and you're very welcome to send me your feedback. Right, and conclusion. Finally, we are finally reaching the end. Yeah. So, noticing strategy. Yeah, pay attention to target language. Try to reproduce it in gap activities. Output strategy. Try to activate target language in speaking and writing. Personalization activities. Try to use target language in meaningful and relevant context to your students. Then, develop your vocabulary width and depth both. And use dictionaries. Learn new words, but also learn more about the new words. We talked about that. Aim at becoming an independent vocabulary learner. Use dictionaries, use thesauruses, use corpora, use B and C, and learn vocabulary deliberately using flashcards and revise regularly. And I honestly think that this topic about deliberate learning, about learning of flashcards, about the ways how we learn vocabulary is a topic for a separate webinar. I only touched some things here. So if there's going to be people who would like to have such a webinar, I think I can prepare some kind of another webinar based on that in some months. And yeah, there's a lot of things to discuss with. I mentioned this implicit, explicit learning, deliberate, incidental learning, and so on. And yeah, these are the resources. So those books who are free to distribute, I will add them to my magic folder, so you will get some of the articles. Those books that are not free, well, I just give you the reference. You can find those books and read them if you're interested. And last but not least, you can join me on my VK page. You can add me on Facebook as friends. And the very last thing is there's going to be a contest. I really want you to try out those things we talked about. And I give you 2 weeks to try this out, to experiment it. I will ask you to join my VK group and write a short feedback or review of the activities and of my webinar in a specific topic there. And the authors of the most informative and interesting posts win a set of straightforward pre-intermediate. It's going to be a course book, workbook, and a teacher's book. I'm going to show you. Yep. So all 3 things. And the second prize will be a teacher's book of straightforward intermediate. Both teacher's books are written by Jim Scrivener, who is a famous ELT writer. And I decided to give you pre-intermediate and intermediate books because I know that, well, not all of you teach at the advanced level, so that kind of books can be also very useful when you're teaching. So try it out, post your feedback or review, and I will announce the winners on 25th of February. It's going to be 2 weeks from now on my VK group, and you're very welcome to participate. This is where you have to put your feedback or review. And I thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you to enjoy your teaching. And we have some time for your questions, right? So you're very welcome to ask me anything you wanted to ask me. Thank you, Alicia, for listening. Thank you, Olga, very, very much. Okay, Tatiana, thank you. Yeah, so this is going to be the contest. Yeah, you're going to receive the recording, I think, tomorrow. There's going to be a magic folder with some additional materials, my favorite materials to use at advanced levels, and some of the articles that I mentioned in my presentation. Thank you, Olga. I'm very glad that you feel inspired. So far, no questions. Okay, I will wait for another minute or 2. Yeah, maybe you will remember something that you wanted to ask. How about enlarging vocabulary for teachers? Well, that's what you can do on your own with your vocabulary. So the simplest thing is that you can join my advanced class. So there's a lot of vocabulary I'm sure you can learn, and you can use all those strategies we talked about to enlarge your personal vocabulary, and you can listen and watch. Maria, can tell about using Quizlet for kinesthetics, please. So the things I've come up. So first of all, when you print the cards, it works much better for you than just having them on the screen. So I either print the cards, or, for example, I print several copies of the same set, and I write the words and phrases in the gaps on this back of the card. Yeah, so you can write, for example, 3 sets. Yeah, and every time you revise a set, you write down the target word, and it really helps your retention. Yeah, so I realized that this is a very good way of doing it. Yep. Next webinar. Well, I don't know. I can't tell you, any like specific dates. It's just an idea that I have. But those of you who really want to participate in further webinars, just let me know about that, and I will include you in my future announcements. Or the easiest thing is that to join my group on VK or to add me on Facebook, and I will always publish anything that I'm going to do, all the webinars and seminars that I am going to conduct, so that you will learn about this. Okay, so just there's one question I've missed. Tatiana. No, I'm sorry. I just can't scroll it down. Oh, Jesus, that's oh no. Just give me a second. Question about domino activities. Should students get rid of their cards? Tatiana, can you please copy the question, because since they will probably get rid of their cards just one after another. I didn't get the question. Can you please just copy and paste so that I see it again? So basically, I just okay. Should the students take turns or they interrupt each other? Yeah. So actually, they can interrupt. They can skip turns if there is a point where the next person in turn has no idea. Yeah. So if you see that the person is stuck, you can say, okay, can anyone help? Can anyone add their cards? And then others join in, and usually the most creative person wins. Yeah, because, well, if one person is stuck and has no idea what to say, the game doesn't proceed. Yeah, so yeah, so you can allow others to join and skip the move and say their sentence. All right. Yeah. Okay. This is it. Probably. No more questions. If you still remember something you wanted to ask, again, ask me on Facebook, ask me in my VK group. You're very welcome to do so, and I will try to help you. Again, thank you very, very much for your participation. Thank you very much for your questions, for your responses, and for being here today with me. Good luck with your teaching. Good luck with everything, and have a nice Sunday afternoon.